the TWL reporting webinar. And Andy, thank you for agreeing to put this on. It's always very helpful to have you do it. We're all set, so please take it away.
Sure thing. Let me clarify as well. We call this housekeeping, but the purpose here, the intent is, you know, these are two different systems. SX is the ERP, TWL is the warehouse management system, and they're both operating independently, and they need to communicate with each other. They need to keep track of things separate from one another. They each have a copy of the order. They each have a copy of inventory records, but they communicate to each other to say, I did this, you do that. Sometimes that doesn't happen. So there's a balancing act there that goes on. And then there's also just the change that occurs when you go from a paper-based system to a warehouse management system like TWL, where you're using a mobile computer, where as material moves around the building, you're required to keep the system in sync with those operations. And that's very easy not to do. I can pick up a box and move from here to there and not scan, not perform any of those tasks in the system, and now your system is out of sync with reality, with the physical inventory. So today we're going to be talking about two different things. Is our system out of balance with real life, and is our system potentially out of balance with the host system, SX.enterprise? Okay, so if you don't know me, Gary already introduced me, Andy is my name. I have a small consulting firm. I support and implement TWL as part of the projects I work on. And I'm very passionate about TWL, and I'm very passionate about topics like this one, because I've seen what happens when folks are not aware of this, when they don't keep on top of it. And it can become disastrous very quickly, and the downfalls can be financial, and lost inventory, lost customer service, lost customers. So that's why we're talking about this today. Again, feel free to enter any questions in the question bank. Gary or I will read them, and I'll answer them while we're on that given topic if they're applicable. Otherwise, I've left plenty of Q&A time at the end. And I'd like to hear some feedback on what you guys are paying attention to or keeping an eye on that I haven't mentioned here today. So when we do this webinar again, it can be even more thorough. Right on. So here's our agenda. Very simple. First, we're going to start off, why are we even talking about this? Why is it a big deal? Then we'll focus on inbound transactions, outbound transactions, the inventory control side of it. And lastly, we'll touch on Willet and WLRB. Those two things are the interface between SX and TWL. For the most part, it's the SX side of it. And then WLRB is the out-of-balance report. Hopefully, those two acronyms are familiar to you. If you're on TWL and you don't know what those are, that is probably not a good sign. So that really speaks to the SX and TWL communication side of it. And those two acronyms there are places to go to make sure that these two systems are talking to each other happily. And then, like I said, we'll do some wrap-up at the end. And I'm hoping some of you will share your ideas with me. So why are we talking about this? Like I said, I'm passionate about this because I've seen it go horribly wrong. And you know, my focus here today is, if you're not paying attention to this stuff, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's not out there. So I have visited, I've been on the phone with plenty of TWL users, been on for 5 months, 5 years, 15 years. They've never looked at these things, and some of them, it can end up being a disaster, and some of them, there's just a little bit of a mess out there, and their processes were pretty straightforward, and they were able to complete things and keep the system up to date and in sync each day, but there still were things slipping through the cracks. So this should eliminate all those concerns by intentionally focusing on a few of these queries here. So where I've seen this go wrong is, you know, time goes by and we're processing orders and we see material leave the building. We load up trucks and it leaves, customers come in, they pick up their packages and they walk out, and we don't do a good job of making sure those processes are completed in the system, orders are shipped and invoiced, that they make it through all the order stages, and we never end up billing those customers. And as time goes by, more and more time goes by, more and more orders, it becomes something we can't even wrap our hands around and recover anymore. We're not going to bill a customer for a $52 order from 6 years ago, so we end up just writing that off. And you multiply that by hundreds of orders, thousands of orders, you can be losing a lot of money. Okay. Material on the dock is another one we'll touch on today. We want to make sure that everything we're receiving is getting put away, both physically and in the system. And the reason for that is we implemented this system to track our inventory and know where it is at all times. We don't want to be walking around looking for stuff anymore. That's how material gets lost for periods of time or lost forever. And that should be eliminated immediately with a location-based RF scanning system like TWL. And the last one I put on here is just an inventory that gets out of balance with the host system between TWL and SX I'm referring to, oftentimes can get so out of control that the only way to recover from that is to start over. And so unfortunately, I have dealt with more than a couple clients who had to either shut off TWL completely, turn it off, bail on it, or had to start over. They said, we need to do a physical inventory at year end, just bill out everything we can. We can't trust our inventory values at all because they don't match from one system to the other. So we're going to count. We're going to count everything, and whatever we count is what we have. And we'll take the write-off or the write-up. Who knows what it's going to be? We don't have an idea what it's going to be. And that's not the environment you want to live in a warehouse management system like this. So, inbound first. And you know I'm not a big fan of PowerPoint, so I want to get out of here as quickly as possible. I want to show you this stuff. So we're going to look at this in TWL. And these are all very simple things to look at. This shouldn't be life-changing, earth-shattering, but knowing where to look and what to pay attention to is key here. So on the inbound side, the first thing I want to say is the inbound transactions set the stage for everything that happens in this environment, right? So the receipts being done accurately and in a timely fashion with the correct numbers for the correct products, being put away in the correct place, all that being recorded in the system really is the ground that we build upon for the rest of the transactions. Our pickers and packers and counters should have an easy job if those first two steps are done properly. Okay, so one thing I touch on always with clients is you may have had a very different arrangement to your staff before TWL. It was key that your pickers knew what the products were. Because you're walking up to a product with a piece of paper and you're looking at that product and you have to identify it by the part number or the description, those folks were experienced. They had a lot of knowledge about the product, a lot of knowledge where to find the product, so it didn't take them long to walk around and find it. But really, that world should be turned upside down once you're on a warehouse management system. The folks in receiving, they're responsible for the majority of the accuracy, right? Our pickers and put-away folks are just executing tasks that they're being directed to do. Okay. All right, so active receipts. First thing we're going to look at here is the TWL online. If I go to modules and receiving, I'm going to go to the receipt master here, and what I'm looking for here are POs that we have completed some receiving for, but we have yet to update the host system. So I'm going to click on the RT number radio button here. I'm going to change the status to active. Okay, so someone has started receiving. They received at least one thing on this PO or this transfer, what have you, but they have yet to close the RT, close the receipt transaction. Okay, what does this mean? Well, if it's today and it is 1:14 p.m., if the transactions here were at 1:10 p.m., well, this guy's probably out there receiving this stuff right now. But this is from 5 days ago. Okay, so probably not a good thing. Why would someone have received stuff 5 days ago and it's not updated to SX.enterprise yet? That is probably a problem. Okay, so as a receiving supervisor, I'm reviewing this each day. Maybe I'm reviewing it multiple times throughout the day, or maybe I make my own receiving guys responsible for checking these themselves. But someone needs to keep an eye on it. Okay. You can make up a report version of this. I'm a big fan of this because I don't like having to instruct people to go look for something. I'd rather provide them with the information. So I have an example here. This is just done in MITS, but you could do this in Hyperion, you could do it in Crystal, SQL, whatever you want. You'll see here, very simple query, just looking in this company and warehouse for any RT that is active. And I just email this out to the receiving supervisor at noon and 5, once a day, whatever you want. Okay. The reason I like doing it in a report writer is because I can schedule it, I can filter it, I can provide more details if I need to. But really the biggest thing is the scheduling side of it. I know someone's going to get the information and be more likely to look at it rather than, hey, every day before you go home, make sure you go in here and look at this. All right. So that's the big thing to receiving, to make sure things are in sync. If we've started something, we've finished it, right? Once this material has been received, we want to make sure it's getting put away. So you make up your own rules, what that is, days work in a day's time, 24 hours, 48 hours, whatever's good for you. But you want to be keeping an eye on what's in the receiving dock. And you may have multiple receiving docks. You'll see in this environment here, the receiving docks are actually by receiving clerk. So they're the guy's initials, doc EGP, doc JLJ, so on and so forth. Some people have docs for days of the week, doc 1, doc 2, all that stuff, or you may just have doc 1, right? But either way, we want to look through here and see, is this stuff reasonable to still be in the dock? Well, no, not if it's 4 months old. Probably not good. Where is this stuff, right? And I know from personal experience, a lot of this stuff is due to this third issue right here, which is just making life difficult to make sure we're getting everything put away that needs to be. Don't store material in the dock. Now, I don't mean physically. Maybe you're storing some material for a special job and you want to keep it right near the docks because of reason X, Y, or Z. But just create another bin location in the system, or create a separate dock that you're intentionally going to exclude. But leave your normal everyday use docks out of that special situation. So you can come in here and make a quick query, and I should see nothing. Or if I see stuff in here, it should just be from today or yesterday. I shouldn't be seeing stuff from months ago, right? So knowing that we're storing stuff in this dock and it's harder for someone to look through here, I'm going to start to see stuff slip through the cracks, right? And there's going to be something from a few days ago, there's going to be something from a few months ago, and if they weren't doing a superb job looking at this, there'd be things from 6 months ago, eventually 6 years ago, and that stuff is gone, right? Who knows where it is? Maybe it got put in the bin and not scanned into the bin, but we're back to an environment where we're walking around looking for stuff, and that's the last thing we want in a warehouse management system. Okay. I'm going to check on questions so far. Again, if you have any questions, especially if they're pertaining to the inbound side while we're talking about inbound, go ahead and fire them off in that question panel right now. We'll move on to the outbound transactions. Okay, so everything's been received, it's been put away, and we've done it in a timely fashion. We've made sure that we closed our RTs, and we scan stuff off of the dock and into the bins when we put it there, and we're checking that our docks are empty. We're doing great with receiving and put away. And we got to make sure when we start picking stuff that we are recording those transactions in the system, and that all of our orders that are walking out of the building are actually getting shipped in the system, right? So there's a couple good ways to do this. I'm a fan of both of these. From the order manager, if you're in an older version, there's no order manager button here. You have to go through modules, orders, order manager. But what we're looking for specifically are not just the work that we haven't started yet, right? That would be our undropped orders, which I've got these to do. Great. Everyone's keeping an eye on those. Your order managers definitely keep an eye on those. But I want to look at stuff that we've started that we haven't finished yet. So there's a button here to select what status you're looking for. And I want basically anything that's not shipped. You could even include in use. Right, so this is going to tell me you have started this. You have at least dropped it, which means you intend to do it, but you're not done with it yet. Okay. And you can sort in here any way you want. You can sort by the stage of the order. And what I'm going to do as the order manager is check to make sure this stuff makes sense. You know, based on the dates, does this make sense? That there's a will call order in pick for months? Probably not, right? Maybe this order was dropped It's still open, so no one even picked it up. No one started it. How come? Why? Let's find out. And then you've got your orders that are packed already. Why are these not shipped? Okay, maybe they're waiting, especially if they're will calls. Maybe they're sitting on the will call shelf waiting for someone to come pick them up. Hopefully you have a process in place that says after X period of time, if a will call has been picked up, we're going to cancel it, so we don't have to keep looking at these. But this is what you want to keep an eye on. So I like doing this in the order manager here for a couple reasons. You can sort by the different columns, and then when you come across something that's questionable, like this one I have highlighted, this is from so long ago, I can double click on it, see more information. I can go to the info icon, see the actual transactions. Oh, look who did this, when they did it, where it came from, so on and so forth. I like the interactive side to that. The alternative is to use the reports. So there is a report, and it's the Outstanding Orders Report under the Management tab. And it's going to look very similar. It's asking very similar questions. Do you want everything in what status? And I'm trying to recreate the same thing. So I'm looking at all unshipped. I get to sort. What sort do you want? Maybe the order date. Right, that makes sense to me. And then you can exclude some order classes or order types if you want. I don't care to see warehouse transfers, so on and so forth. I'm going to run this report, and I should get basically the same output that I had in the order manager. Right? Now I've got this by order date, so I've got the oldest stuff here at the top, but you could do by status. You could do by carrier, whatever the other options are in there. But this gives you your list of stuff to work on. Again, the thing that's frustrating to me about this is if I have a problem, if I want to see something, I'm stuck. This is all I get. I got to go open another order manager to see the details to this order, who did it, when they did it, so on and so forth. Okay? So those are the two ways that I like approaching this. Let me get this out of here. And I also touched on loaded orders here as well. So some folks don't know about this ability. And even, I think back in 4.4, if anyone is still on 4.4, that functionality may not even exist. But you have, I'll quickly show you, unless I just lost my, sure did. Lost my TWL. We'll come back to it. If you want to use the loaded stage, it's set up on the carrier master. And what it says is when you ship an order, when you ship a carton, I should say, do you want to really ship it or do you want to pretend ship it? Do you want to ship it to the loaded stage? So this carrier right here, First Capital, when we ship a carton for this, it goes to the ship stage. That's the end of it. But for someone like Will Call, we load those. And then there's actually the option for what type of orders as well. If I change this and go to load, which type of orders. If you have a warehouse transfer will call, would you want to load that or send that to the ship stage? So the purpose of the loaded stage here is to give you another bucket to put orders in. So a lot of people will load up the trucks and ship the cartons at that time. This is your last chance to touch the product, right? So you're scanning the cartons as you're throwing them on the truck, but the orders aren't actually being delivered until tomorrow morning. So that means we're potentially invoicing those customers tonight when they're not receiving their material until tomorrow. So a way to change that would be to load the orders, and then you could ship them when the truck actually leaves in the morning or when the truck gets back. The other place this is helpful is for these will call orders. So with will call orders, if I'm shipping the carton and it's going to the ship stage, that means any will call that hasn't been picked up, I'm leaving in the pack stage, right, until that guy comes in to get his stuff. And that gets mixed up with all the rest of my orders that are in the pack stage. So again, just more muck to look through, kind of like in the receiving dock. I said, don't store stuff there. If I didn't have all these will calls in the pack stage, I'd have 4 or 5 orders to look at and wonder why they're in the pack stage. But now I have a bunch to look through because I have these will calls muddying up the water. So if you use the loaded stage there, you can ship the carton when you put it on the will call shelf, and they'll move into the loaded stage. Then when the guy comes to pick up his material, you can come into your exception screen and look at staged orders, and your loaded orders will be here, and then you can ship the order from here directly. But it gives you that break that truly my packed orders are stuff that should be sitting somewhere waiting to go on a truck. And those are the ones I want to keep an eye on. Good deal. Okay, so there was a question in the meantime here. What table do I need to look at to report active receipts? It is the RT table, and I think this is just coming from the RTMST. I'll double check it for you. But the TWL database is pretty straightforward. It's pretty simple. You got to learn the table names and field names because they're a little bit different than SX. But to recreate something is pretty straightforward. So RTMST table where it's active. And that will give you, that essentially recreates that report that you would get out of TWL. And you could recreate the open orders, the outstanding orders report as well. Again, to me, the report, not that helpful. I want something interactive, so that's why I love doing it from the order manager, and that's how I typically train folks to do it, just so you can dig into the details. Okay, great. Let's get back to our slides here. Where are we going next? Okay. Loaded orders. If you do counter sales, you may have gone down the slippery slope of seeing that counter sale orders are so easy to make changes. You're starting to consider why you would ever do any type of order that's not a counter sale order. Why would I do a regular SO, right? The only problem with that is, again, you're muddying up the waters, and now I need to be sifting through orders that I think might be shipped, but I'm not sure because everything's all mixed up. So if you segregate those orders, if a counter sale is truly someone that came in and purchased something over the counter, there should be no such thing as a counter sale that is not shipped and invoiced today. If someone has entered a counter sale, it's going right through to invoice today. So you can keep an eye on that from the SX side of it. You would also see it in TWL. Those would be incomplete counter sale orders. This particular environment doesn't do any counter sales at all. But that's something to keep an eye on. And again, if that's a process you have in place right now to use counter sales that might be more will call type orders and hang out for a couple days, I would encourage you to revisit that, try and find a way to segregate those orders from the rest so there's limited confusion. More than a couple folks I've seen now have implemented reports that show where a signature has been captured, but the order has not been moved to the ship stage. And it's particularly helpful in environments where we're doing stuff like that, where our counter sales may or may not be shipping today. So if we captured a signature, the order should be shipping. But if we didn't need to worry about what counter sales are shipping and what aren't shipping today, we just ship them all, then we wouldn't need a report. That's my point. Okay. And the last thing is, and I bring this one up because I forget this one myself all the time, especially when doing database cleanup. So there's an order header and there's an order line to our order in TWL. And both of those update to the ship stage when we ship an order. There are also picks that get created, and those get closed out when we complete each pick. But as we're picking into our cartons or we're packing our orders into cartons, we're creating all these cartons to ship out. We should be shipping all those cartons as well. And the list of all the cartons we've used is being kept in TWL, and it is keeping track of what cartons are shipped and what cartons are unshipped. And oftentimes folks, again, myself included, are too busy, too excited to scrub the order header and order lines and move those along to the ship stage that we forget about the cartons. So this carton information screen here can be particularly handy for a number of queries in TWL where you know an order but you want to look up the cartons, or you know the carton but you don't know what order it's for. You can quickly find those answers in here. And then also what I'm going to show you here is what cartons are open, meaning they have not been loaded or shipped. And if all my orders are shipped, all my cartons should be shipped, right? I know they're not because I checked this. And I know that an order from Wave 52, which came from a decade ago, this carton has never been shipped. So this is just some bad data here that should be cleaned up as well. We shouldn't have these things, right? So these cartons, we go look at the order, oh, this order is packed, and it's from a long, long time ago. Our ancient order, that order doesn't even exist. It's already been scrubbed from the database because it's so old. Right? So just another angle of how to look at this. I want to show you that. Can help for some quick queries, or it could help you just in data management, in order management as well. Okay, let's move on to the inventory control side of it here. So the biggest thing that I think can come out of the inventory side of it here is more process-related problems. The stuff we touched on for receiving and put away, that's mostly, I think, an organizational thing. Once you get the flow down and you organize how your docks are, you can keep track of inventory moving through the system and make sure that everything is staying clean. On the inventory control side, this really is more of an ongoing thing to make sure people are doing what they should be doing. Okay, what I mean by that is we'll do the zero and negative inventory first. That's a decent example. So you can find this a myriad of ways. I'm going to go in through inventory detail and just say, show me inventory that's less than or equal to 0, and I'm going to have a few records here. And what this is typically showing is that someone has picked us empty. Right? Here's our last couple transactions at this bin. We adjusted ourselves from 0 to 3. So there were 3 in this bin, then someone picked, and this is a pick to carton environment, so pick and pack. To take 3 out would bring us back to 0. If you're familiar with the picking process, you're asked a question when you pick a bin empty for a particular inventory record, and it says, is there any more inventory left here? And if the person says yes, I see something sitting here, then it leaves a 0 inventory record. Okay, so that is pointing the finger at, we have an inventory problem. Someone needs to pay attention to this. And so I know a lot of folks don't look at this and maybe don't see the value in it, and it might be because pickers are so frequently answering that question incorrectly. They think it means, is there any inventory in this bin at all for any product? But that's not what we're asking. The question is asking for this product, for this inventory record, is there any left? And if we can get that training implemented properly, then if there are any zeros in here, we really need to go investigate them, because that is someone telling us our inventory is inaccurate, and that shouldn't be something we look at occasionally. That should be something we look at immediately. Right? Your inventory control team should be all over that. If you're going to cycle count something, you can start with your zeros and then move on to your normal cycle count for the day. All right, you can also have negatives. You saw that I'm searching less than or equal to 0. Negatives would be folks either putting away more than is at the dock or picking more than is at a bin. Again, indications of procedural problems. Okay, those would also be identified as inventory discrepancies, which we're going to look at next. So under modules inventory control, there's an inventory discrepancies button. And this is going to show you every inventory discrepancy that exists. I think I want to be in a different environment. Inventory discrepancies. Here we go. So it's going to tell you basically whenever someone is doing not what they were told to do. So you'll see the transaction types in here, a cycle count, a put away, a pick, right? And then the reason why, either a quantity or a location. A quantity means not for the quantity I told you to. You were supposed to pick 1 and you picked 0. You were supposed to count 17, you counted 18. Or location, I told you to put away here and you put away there instead. Some of these you may not care about at all, like the put away stuff. This environment specifically, they have a bin called new part that tells them this is a new product, find a good home for it. So they're always going to have discrepancies that say you're putting away in the wrong location. But these picking discrepancies, the count discrepancies, the put away if there were quantity discrepancies, those are indications of problems, right? And so we want to keep an eye on that. You can create cycle counts directly from this screen. You can also view the 0 and negative inventory directly from the screen. There aren't any here. But the inventory discrepancy screen something where I don't think you ignore it. That's not the right thing to do. And you don't need to pay attention to every little thing in here because there's a lot of noise, especially with an environment that's doing thousands of transactions a day. You might be totally fine with some of these, and you just want to focus on others. Okay, 2 more. I promised we would go quick today. It's already 35 minutes. Incomplete cycle counts. I'll show you how to find these real quick, and then we'll talk about it. Again, this is something I would create a report for. I wouldn't ask someone to do this, but if you were going to, they would come here to inquiry, look up all the cycle count waves for a period of time, let's say for the last year, and say those that have been started but not finished. Okay, what's going on here? We're not completing our cycle counts. Looks like we have a procedural problem with cycle counting here, right? We're starting them, but we're not finishing them for some reason. Probably not going back and clearing our discrepancies, right? There are no discrepancies. So who knows what the issue is? But the big point here for incomplete cycle counts is the impact it can have on what you think you're doing in the warehouse. And if you are creating cycle counts, especially the system automatically creating them each day, and you don't finish them, the cycle count flag is still on for that inventory record. Okay, I just clicked on one by accident. Cycle count flag is on here. It is already assigned to a cycle count wave. This is never going to get put on another cycle count. So if you leave garbage out there, you're supposed to count this item because it's an A item once a month, but it didn't get completed on a cycle count from a year ago. It's never going to come up on another cycle count until you remedy this one that it's already on. Okay, so again, I would recreate the report so it's a lot easier to look at, find that information, but critical that this cleanup is done. And the same thing on the replenishment side. I don't have an environment to look at with active replenishments in it, but you want to keep an eye on that. If you don't know this, or you don't use replenishments but are considering it, this actually just came up in a conversation I had with a client today. Replenishments are generated at a trigger point. When you hit the minimum via a pick transaction, if you have existing inventory in another bin, that's when the replenishment is generated, right? And so that's the trigger point for it, and that only happens once. And then there's also another big flaw, and that is on the cleanup side. There is no cleanup that is automated. So if you have a primary pick setup where you keep 100 at the bin and your minimum is 10, so you're going to replenish 90, your replenishment is created for 90, and then you go get 89 to fit in the bin because that's all that fit, and you never clear the remaining 1, that replenishment is going to sit out there indefinitely, looking to replenish a quantity of 1. Okay, so you got to make sure you stay on top of that and wipe all those out. That should be part of your process for replenishments. After all the replenishments are done for a given zone, go in there, wipe everything out, start fresh again, and you can run top-offs if you need to recreate any that you think you might have wiped out by mistake. Okay, last general topic here, and then some Q&A time, is WILLIT and WLRB. So we could dedicate an entire session to this. We could actually dedicate a 2-hour session once a week for 6 weeks to go over this. But what I wanted to say about this, without explaining too much, is to do them every day, first of all, to review them every single day. So to go to WILLIT and look for transactions every day that have failed, have gotten stuck, have errored out for some reason, and to look at your out of balance every day as well. Now, a couple points about the out of balance is to consider customizing the report or rebuilding it from scratch. If you're in an environment where you regularly ship orders but then put them on hold for extended periods of time waiting for rebates or cost or freight amounts to be applied, you're throwing all those items on your out of balance report, and they're just, again, causing a bunch of noise. So the 5 things that are truly out of balance that someone needs to look for, they have to look through 500 examples to find them. And so just so you know what I'm talking about here, well, I think I'm on the wrong machine. I don't have that report handy. Yeah, I don't. An out-of-balance report with 500 items on it is a nightmare to look through. So don't give that to someone with all that noise on there. Customize the report or rebuild it from scratch, and then you can filter out whatever you don't care about. There have been a number of conversations on the Tug site and at conferences about customizing that report, and I know some of you have shared the changes you've made to the out-of-balance report with each other as well to help. But don't live with the standard report if it's not helping you, because you have to keep an eye on that stuff. Okay, and then back to will it for a second. I've gotten into the habit of getting rid of the noise right off the bat. I don't have SX up. Shame. While I'm opening this, you've heard me say this a few times already. It's hard to keep an eye on stuff if there's a bunch of garbage in your way, right? So in will it, there are a bunch of transactions that are created every single day that we can just ignore because they're harmless, because they're pointless, because Infor says those are created, but we're not going to get rid of them. We're not going to clean that stuff up for you, right? So this is what you want your will it screen to look like. Nothing in here. I can't show you because I know it's running in this environment, but there are transactions that will show when POs are pre-received. You know, pre-receivers are created. Some of those are acknowledgments that come through the EDI process. Anytime someone attempts to change an order that's already in process in TWL, in order entry, I go to maintain an order. Oh, sorry, they're already picking this. You can't make changes. It creates a transaction and will it and sits it out there for you to look at, right? So be creative. That's what I did. Created a Q&D that said, go look for these transactions. If you find them, just inactivate them. I don't care to look at them. That way my person that actually has to look at will it and review it every day doesn't look through 100 transactions, cleaning up 98 of them because they're garbage and then focusing on 2. He only has 2 to look at straight away. Cool. The last thing I wanted to say was consider doing something like Graphic Solutions did. They showed us when we were on site a couple years ago. And I have an example here from this client. They're using MITs to do this. Which one are you? This one. Put all this information together in one place. What cycle counts do you have left to do? What pallets do you need to put away? What replenishments are there to do? How many open picks do you have? By truck, by zone, by whatever. Put this together in an easy-to-consume format so someone doesn't have to go out and run 12 different reports each day. Right? Wouldn't that make life easy? The only thing I wish you could do is click on one of these numbers and have it take you into that information in TWL. But hopefully I've shown you the TWL reports, the TWL queries to run, or the screens that you can go to find this information. But my goal here was to show you how to find what's not being completed, what's slipping through the cracks, where is product moving, and maybe the system isn't keeping up to date. And if I did that, I was successful. So we have a few minutes here. If you have any questions, I want to hear them now. Also, if you're doing something that I didn't mention, if you have an interesting report or query, or you've noticed, hey, when we do this type of transaction, something always fails and we're doing cleanup, or this stuff slips through the cracks, please bring that stuff up right now and we can talk about it. We can bring it to everyone's attention.
And if anybody
speak out loud, yeah, go ahead. You can raise your hand as well. If it's
yeah, and I'll unmute you so you can ask Andy a question.
It would be a shame if there were no questions.
Did you cover all the questions that are up there now, Andy?
Yeah, let me pop them open. How does this thing open up? Oh my goodness, here we go. All right, so we've got a few. How do you deal with negative inventory? Example. Cynthia says, for example, you show 100, all 100 tied up. However, you go back to pick 10 and only find 5. How are the rest of the open transactions dealt with in terms of allocation? Is it automatic reduction in allocation, or the changes done manually? So if I understand that correctly, the system thinks there's 10 on the shelf, but when we go there, there's only 5. We're going to complete our order by picking 5, right? And it's going to warn us, hey, you're supposed to do 10, you're only doing 5. Are you sure you want to do that? Are you sure? Are you sure? Are you sure? we're going to say yes, close that pick, but we still have the problem, right? We still have a system that thinks there's 5 there, and there aren't. So I'm the biggest fan of there being something that occurs right then and there, that we notify a supervisor that we have indeed short-picked a line, but someone needs to take care of that. The worst thing that's going to happen is someone else is going to come looking for those 5 that aren't there. So we need to remedy that. Most people don't let their pickers take care of inventory control issues, but it's something that we should have someone on sooner rather than later. Even cleaning them up at the end of the day. Maybe you've seen this, maybe you've experienced this, but the worst thing, even worse than someone else coming to look for those 5, is you coming to look for those 5 later on the back order for the same order that's still looking for those 5, right? So that can happen. You can be in an endless loop looking for those 5 for the same order. You keep short picking it, and the order keeps coming back looking for more. Okay, another question from Cynthia. How does the receiving process handle sub-supersedes at the time of receiving on the dock? I don't think I'll be able to show you this right now. It'll take me too long to get there to recreate it. But you can do substitutions and supersedes at the time of receiving on the RF. In that PO, if you add a new line to the PO, it asks if you want to add the line or if it is a substitute for another line. So if you want more information about that, you can email me directly, and I can send you some screenshots, or I can send you the information from the manual. But there is the ability to add lines and also supersede at the time of receiving. Randy asks, do you have a sample rebuilt WLRB query to give me an idea where to start? Oh, I don't think that I do. Anything that I would have would be on a client site and would be quite unique just to them. But what you're looking for is to compare the inventory values and then take into account orders that are in particular stages on both sides. You need to compare the orders as well. I don't have a good answer for that, but we need to start. We should. WLRB custom sample. Let's work on finding one. Okay. See what else we got here. Cynthia's got another question. Thanks for all the questions, Cynthia. Can you send a pick ticket that has been dropped to WMS back to the ordered stage? You can. There's a couple things that can be done. So from the order manager, did that guy just disappear on me again? Where are you? Might be hiding behind here. Here he is. If we have an order undropped, and we highlight it and we say 0 ship, that's going to send a transaction back to SX.enterprise that is going to say, move this back to the ordered stage and put it on hold. There's an AO option under the WL settings that says, what hold code do you want to put that under? And you can change that there. By default, it is Z, as in zebra. So we'll put the order on hold. It will take all the ship quantities off. That's one way to do it. That's forcing it from the TWL side. The other way is to just go into order entry and pull it back from TWL. If you maintain that order while it's still undropped here in TWL, you're going to pull that order back out, and you can change your ship quantities to 0 there. I realize that's very time-consuming if there's 100 lines on the order, though, so you might not want to do that. All right. Let's see if we have any other questions. I think that is it. So we lied a little bit and said it would only be 30 to 40 minutes. We're at 50. But if there are no other questions, I'll just say thank you very much and let Gary wrap up.
And I will do just that. Thank you very much, Andy. It's always a great help when you do these for us. Have a great day, everybody. There will be a recording in case you want to pass it on. Just look on the TUG site starting tomorrow. Take care now.